Hey there, friends. Have you ever thought about how the ocean, with its massive sharks, giant octopuses, and freaky creatures that look like they crawled out of a horror flick, might be scarier than dry land? Yeah, I get it. In nature, the underwater world often feels like a forbidden zone, packed with danger. From the days of dinosaurs to now, the ocean's been like a stage for some seriously terrifying monsters. Picture this: you're swimming, minding your own business, when bam, a prehistoric shark or a colossal octopus pops up. You'd be shaking in your flippers, right? Even a T-Rex or those meat-eating dromaeosaur dinos on land might not make you quake as much as these underwater nightmares. But hold up. Let me spill a super juicy secret. There was a rare moment in Earth's history when jumping into the water was the safest way to stay alive. Sounds bananas? Right? But it's true. There was a time when land was so dangerous you'd be screaming, "Get me to the sea, pronto." And that's the wild story we're diving into today. Let's rewind the clock to 259 million years ago, to a time called the Lopingian period. Weird name. Don't sweat it. I couldn't remember it at first either. Just think of it as a super bizarre episode of Earth's history where everything was totally bonkers. This was the tail end of the Permian period. And trust me, Earth back then was like nowhere you've ever seen. If you zoomed in from space, Earth would look like a wacky ball. Almost all the land was smushed together into one giant chunk called the supercontinent Pangaea. Imagine Africa, the Americas, Antarctica, India, Australia, and bits of Europe mashed up like a massive jigsaw puzzle. What's left? A humongous ocean called Panthalassa covers over 60% of Earth's surface, twice the size of today's Pacific Ocean. Just thinking about swimming in a sea that big makes you want to say, "Nah, I'll stay home. Thanks." But wait, it gets weirder. Time was playing tricks back then, too. The moon was closer to Earth, so a day was only 22 hours long. You'd barely finish breakfast and scroll TikTok before it was bedtime. The geography was a total mess, too. On Pangaea's east side, there were some medium-sized landmasses like Siberia, Kazakhstan, North China, and even an island made up of South China and Southeast Asia. Turkey, Iran, and Tibet. Yup, they were lonely islands floating between two smaller oceans called Tethys and Faduong. Earth looked like a role-playing game map, full of strange lands and endless seas. Now you're probably thinking that the giant Panthalassa Ocean was crawling with monsters. Who wouldn't? Right? But here's the big shocker. During the Lopingian, the sea was super chill. No massive sharks or Hollywood-style giant octopuses here. Honestly, the ocean was like an empty public pool with just a few tiny fish swimming around. Sure, sharks had been around for 200 million years by then. If you're a Permian fan, you might have heard of Helicoprion, an 8-meter-long, 26-ton shark with a mouthful of teeth stacked like a buzzsaw. That thing would make you run for the hills, but bad luck for it. Helicoprion went extinct before the Lopingian even started, so the ocean, pretty empty, with no giant monsters in sight. The sharks that were left, like Hybidus, were only about 2 meters long, think leopard shark size, not exactly terrifying. Their teeth were only good for munching soft squid, not crunching bones. Other sharks, like Sphenacanthus or Hibodus, were even punier, barely a meter long, like the runts of the shark world. Then there were sea scorpions or eurypterids. Sounds cool, but they were past their prime. Back in the Devonian, they were ocean bosses, but by the Lopingian, they were nearly extinct, with just a few stragglers hanging on, not exactly top predators. Why? Because of the Capetanian extinction event 2 million years earlier, a disaster that wiped out tons of sea creatures, leaving the ocean oddly peaceful. You might spot some trilobites, ammonites, or cephalopods hiding underwater, but they were tiny and not worth worrying about. In short, the ocean was like a calm resort compared to the chaos on land. Speaking of land, the Lopingian was a straight-up nightmare on Pangaea. After the Capitanian extinction, the old dominant species like Dinocephalians' big, diverse beasts were toast. What took over, a new crew of ferocious predators, and the rock stars of the show were gorgonopsids, saber-toothed monsters that sounded scary just saying their name. Long story short, land was not the place for a casual stroll between bloodthirsty predators and brutal weather. It was like Mother Nature designed it to test your survival skills. Good luck lasting a day. Meanwhile, the ocean was like a safe hideout where you could swim without worrying about some giant beast chomping your head off. Picture this. You're strolling across the supercontinent Pangaea, minding your own business, when boom, you come face to face with a beast that looks like a cross between a saber-toothed cat and a straight-up demon. Meet the gorgonopsids. These creatures were first dug up by paleontologists in 1876, and their fossils were so creepy that the scientists were like, "Yep." Naming these after the Gorgon from Greek mythology is spot on, they're total monsters. Gorgonopsids had some seriously cool features. Their teeth, sharp as razors. So deadly you wouldn't dare test their edge. Their skulls were long with a fancy parasagittal structure. Sounds complicated, but just think of it as a super tough design built for chomping and tearing. Their front teeth and canines were extra long, making them some of the first saber-toothed predators to roam Earth. One look at them, and you'd be like, yep, these are the ancestors of Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, but way meaner. But hold the phone, don't get it twisted. Gorgonopsids weren't cats, and they weren't cuddly pets. They were therapsids, a group closer to mammals than reptiles, but not quite cool enough to be full-on mammals. In simple terms, they're like our super scary distant cousins. Gorgonopsids weren't always massive brutes. When they first showed up 265 million years ago, in the middle of the Permian period, they were tiny, about the size of your foot. Back then, they were like feisty little puppies, chasing down lizards and small reptiles, all, "You think you can outrun me? Watch this." But as time rolled on, each generation of gorgonopsids leveled up, getting bigger and worse, like they were chugging some prehistoric protein shakes. The real glow-up happened at the end of the Permian when the Dinocephalians went extinct. With no one to steal their thunder, gorgonopsids took over the spotlight, and then the ultimate rock star emerged, Inostrancevia, the biggest, baddest gorgonopsid of them all, and the most terrifying land predator of its time. Inostrancevia was not the kind of critter you'd want to bump into in a dark alley. Fully grown, these beasts could stretch over 3.5 meters long and weigh more than 453 kilos, think grizzly bear size. On average, they were about as big as a tiger. But don't let their normal size fool you. Inostrancevia was a hunting machine built to perfection. Its long, sturdy legs made it sprint like a track star and keep going like a marathon runner. Its massive canines, up to 15 centimeters long, curved like daggers, with serrated edges ready to slice through flesh, cause major bleeding, and wreck any prey's internal organs. If Inostrancevia caught you, you'd be having a really bad day. Its prey, usually medium to large plant eaters, probably thought, why didn't I just hide in the ocean? Scientists still bicker about how Inostrancevia hunted. One group thinks it was like Smilodon, leaping onto its prey's neck and slicing arteries with a single chomp, like one shot done. Others say it played the long game, biting and then bolting, letting its prey bleed out slowly until it collapsed from shock. Either way, meeting Inostrancevia was no picnic. Imagine chilling at a barbecue when a bear-sized beast with dagger-like teeth charges you straight-up horror movie material. Inostrancevia wasn't just strong, it was a master adapter. It roamed everywhere, from Africa to Asia to what's now Russia and Europe. You could spot it in the warm, flooded plains of South Africa or the chilly deserts of Russia, where only a few shallow lakes and sparse forests of peltosperms, the dominant plants back then, dotted the landscape. Some scientists even think Inostrancevia might have had fur to stay warm in those cold deserts, but that's still a mystery. Is it true, or just prehistoric gossip? Inostrancevia may have been king, but it wasn't alone. At the end of the Permian, the land was a playground for tons of other gorgonopsids, each scary in its own way. In what's now Russia, you might run into Pravoslavlevia, a smaller mini version, or Sorogorgon, a mid-sized terror that could still make you sprint for your life. These guys ruled the ecosystem, leaving plant eaters praying, "Please don't spot me." But South Africa, that was the real hot spot. A group of giant gorgonopsids called Rubigini evolved there, separate from Inostrancevia, and they were just as ferocious, turning South Africa into a no-go zone. The star of the show, Rubigea atrox lived in what's now South Africa and Tanzania. It stretched up to 3 meters long, almost as big as Inostrancevia, but what made it stand out was its ginormous skull, taking up over 15% of its body length. This skull wasn't just huge, it was thick, with bony bumps, built for chomping hard and wrestling big prey. Think of it like a heavyweight boxer, ready to knock out anyone dumb enough to challenge it. Rubigea atrox's teeth were no joke either, with serrated edges that might have been even better at slicing meat than Inostrancevia. But here's the funny part, its bite force was only about 20% stronger than a wolf's. Around 715 newtons, not exactly earth-shattering. This just proves its teeth were so perfectly designed. It was like, I don't need a crazy strong bite, my teeth do all the work. Rubigea atrox wasn't a loner. Evidence suggests it hung out with other Rubiginae gorgonopsids, with 9 genera ranging from medium to massive. And here's the tea, Rubigea matrox might have even lived alongside Inostrancevia in South Africa. These two giants, with similar sizes and hunting styles, probably clashed like rival teams in a championship game. Fights between them likely happened all the time, making life on land even more chaotic. Let's give a big shout-out to the Therocephalians, another crew of predators in the giant therapsid family, cousins to the gorgonopsids but rocking a different vibe. These guys popped up in the middle of the Permian period, and by the Lopingian, they'd turned into a super diverse squad, strutting their stuff from Russia to Antarctica, Africa to China. Picture them as a prehistoric boy band, each member with their flair. Some were slick hunters, others just munched on plants. Therocephalians looked a bit like gorgonopsids, with big skulls and beefy bodies. If you're not a paleontology nerd, you might mix them up, but squint a little, and the differences pop. Their skulls were deeper and wider, built for chomping hard and digging in deep. Their teeth straight and smaller, and none of that long saber-toothed drama like the gorgonopsids. Their bodies were shorter and more compact like a sports car compared to the gorgonopsids' monster truck. Therocephalians were the all-purpose version of gorgonopsids, with a dizzying array of hunting tricks. Thanks to their diversity, Therocephalians had hunting moves that gorgonopsids could only dream of. Some, like Ichibops, dog-sized, and Eucambersia, might have even packed venom. Yep, these could be the first four-legged critters on Earth to evolve venom. Like, one bite and you're toast. Bro, if that's true, they're the OG ancestors of today's venomous snakes, but way cooler because they rocked 4 legs. Then you had weirdos like the Estemenoceuchids, semi-aquatic types that lurked near water, ambushing prey like modern crocs but with a "I'm from 250 million years ago" attitude. Meanwhile, others were fully land-based, chasing down big prey with bizarre saber-like teeth like Silicosaurus. In short, Therocephalians were like a mixed candy box. Everyone's different, but they could all make you quake. Among the Therocephalians, the brightest star was Moschorhynus, a leopard-sized predator with a lion-sized head and razor-sharp, cone-shaped teeth. Picture it as the villain in a video game, cool and terrifying. That oversized head meant Moschorhynus had a serious bite, strong enough to make its prey think, "Why didn't I just go vegan?" Paleontologists guess Moschorhynus hunted by overpowering its targets. It'd use its bodybuilder-strong front legs to pin prey to the ground, then deliver a fatal chomp with its sharp teeth and mega jaws. Like, stay down. I got this. Fossils show Moschorhynus was one of the most common Therocephalians at the end of the Permian, even earning the title of top predator in some areas, going toe-to-toe with gorgonopsids. In other words, Moscow Highness was like, I don't need saber-teeth, I'm still a boss. If Moscow Highness was a star, Megawaha was a straight-up legend. This was the biggest therocephalian ever, stretching up to 3 meters long, roaming Russia in the early half of the Lopingian. Imagine a beast the size of a small truck, with jaws ready to take down anyone who dared step up. What makes Megawaha extra wild is the fossil evidence specifically. It's fossilized poop. Yup, its droppings show it might have chowed down on big dicynodonts. And here's the juicy part. Some studies suggest Megawaha had venom glands. Scientists found clues on its skull that it could have pumped venom through ducts when it bit its prey. Like, one jab, and you're done. If true. Megawaha wasn't just huge, it was a pro-level assassin. But here's the drama. Not every paleontologist buys the venom theory. Megawaha's fossils are often a bit beat up, so the idea is still up for debate. Still, just imagining a 3-meter beast with venom is enough to make you want to dive into the ocean, right? But wait, the land wasn't done yet. You also had protosuchids, croc-like reptiles but slimmer, with needle-sharp teeth. Unlike gorgonopsids or therocephalians, these were straight-up reptiles, living both on land and in water. They popped up on nearly every continent except Antarctica and North America, ready to snatch any prey that wandered by. Imagine you're hiking, and a prehistoric croc leaps out of the bushes. You'd be screaming, "Mom, save me." Then there were Chroniosuchians, also croc-like but decked out with thick armor plates along their backs, like they were wearing bulletproof vests. That armor probably protected them from big theropsids, like, you can't touch me. They could live fully on land or splash around in water, and some, like Eurolurpiton in Russia, were as big as American alligators. Spot one in the woods, and you'd think, yeah, I'd rather swim with sharks. Finally, don't sleep on the primitive amphibians, the ones that make you watch your step near fresh water. These were pro-ambush hunters, lurking underwater or by the shore, like, come closer. Buddy, I just want to taste you among them. The Rhinsuchidae family was the scariest, looking like giant salamanders or crocs. Their superstar Uranoscentrodon, a 13-ton monster from South Africa, chilling with gorgonopsids and therocephalians. Imagine you're splashing in a lake, and a 13-ton beast surfaces pure horror movie vibes over in Russia. You had the Aragosaurus family, another amphibian crew, sleeker but still stretching up to 3 meters. They were like the classy version of Rhinsuchidae, but don't let their looks fool you. They were still underwater killers in the Lopingian period, with predators like Inostransavia and Muscarhinus lurking around every corner. You might think plant-eating animals were just running for their lives or, well, becoming lunch, but nope. These guys were tough as nails and super diverse, from dicynodonts to captorhinids to parasaurs, taking over every inch of the supercontinent Pangaea. Compared to the meat-eaters, the herbivore squad was even more varied, each species rocking its slick trick to avoid ending up as dinner. Picture them as survival game heroes, each with a unique skill to dodge the drama from the predator posse. First up, let's give a shout-out to Lystrosaurus, the ultimate herbivore superstar of the time. This dude looked like a mashup of a badger and a pig, about the size of a regular hog, and was everywhere. One glance at Lystrosaurus and you might think, whoa, this goofy-looking thing survived. How, but don't sleep on it. This guy had a vibe like, I'm not cute, but I'm built to last. Lystrosaurus came equipped with some seriously strong tusks and canines, which scientists think it used to dig burrows. Yup, this guy was a master tunnel maker, like predators. Catch me chilling underground. Those deep burrows were like invincible fortresses, keeping Lystrosaurus safe from the chomping jaws of gorgonopsids. And get this, Lystrosaurus wasn't the only one with digging skills. Another group, the cynodonts, also figured out how to use their wide skulls to shovel dirt and build hideout burrows. If the Lopingian had an award for best burrow builder, Lystrosaurus would be clutching the trophy. Next, let's talk about parasaurs, the guys who went with the strategy. I don't run, I tank instead of digging. They were like armored tanks, looking a bit like the ankylosaurs from dinosaur days, but without the clubbed tail. Parasaurs had big bony plates embedded in their skin, like natural armor, plus super sturdy skeletons that could shrug off bites from predators. They were some of the biggest creatures at the end of the Permian, like, don't mess with me, I'm huge. The brightest star in the Parasaur crew was Scutosaurus, a beast weighing over 2 tons and as long as the biggest gorgonopsids. Yeah, check out Scutosaurus's skeleton and you'll see it move slowly as a turtle, relying entirely on its armor to survive. That armor was next level, decked out with decorative spikes on its skull and muscles so thick it was practically untouchable. Imagine a gorgonopsid trying to bite Scutosaurus and giving up, like, too tough, I'll go hunt something else. Scutosaurus was mostly found in what's now Russia, but the Parasaur family was global, popping up from Africa to Asia. With their armor and massive size, they were like unbeatable legends, even if they moved like they were wading through molasses. Beyond Lystrosaurus and Parasaurs, Pangaea was home to a ton of other herbivore groups, each with its secret weapon for survival. Let's run through a few MVPs. Kingoriids, a group of plant-eating reptiles, were super resilient, powering through all the land's chaos. Bentonia, smaller but clever, knew how to dodge danger like pros. Dinogalarics, another crew, rocked the I'm small but I'm quick vibe, weaving through predators with ease. Every group had its way of handling the harsh land, whether it was sprinting, hiding, or suiting up like superheroes. Thanks to this diversity, herbivores didn't just survive, they thrived across Pangaea, even with terrifying predators on their tails. Amid all this land-based madness, here's a tiny bit of good news you didn't have to worry about looking up. Unlike the Mesozoic, where giant pterosaurs swooped down like something out of Jurassic Park, the Lopingian skies were weirdly peaceful, no scary flying monsters to deal with. Sure, a few things were buzzing around like griffin flies, think giant dragonflies or ancient diapsids, but they were harmless to bigger animals. They were like today's sparrows, maybe they'd startle you, but they couldn't do any real damage. This lack of aerial threats was thanks to the collapse of the Carboniferous rainforest way earlier, which tanked the diversity of insects and flying creatures. The biggest sky dwellers were probably the Weigeltosaurids, a family of gliding reptiles about the size of a large bat. They were trouble for insects, but for you, total non-issue. They liked hanging out in trees or gliding over the ground, with bodies built for smooth sailing. Like, I'm just gliding for fun. No stress. In short, the sky was the one place in the Lopingian where you could relax. If you've been paying attention, life in the Lopingian seemed to be partying in just a few spots, like Europe, Russia, and Africa. Why? Because most of the land on the supercontinent Pangaea was a total no-go zone. Huge chunks of it were practically unlivable, like Mother Nature was saying. Live here, good luck, buddy. The average temperature, a scorching 35 degrees Celsius, twice as brutal as the hottest summer day you've ever sweated through. Imagine stepping outside, feeling like you're melting, then doubling that misery. That's the Lopingian vibe. This insane heat turned Pangaea into a giant desert, especially near the equator, where life said, I'm out picture getting lost in a desert as big as a continent, with no trees, no water, just sand and heat ready to roast you alive. That was the reality for tons of Pangaea's regions. If this weather hit today, all life would be screaming, I quit this game. But the drama didn't stop there. Up in northern Pangaea, you had the Central Pangaean Mountains, a massive mountain range stretching across the continent like a giant wall of doom. These peaks weren't just cool to look at, they made things worse by causing hardcore droughts. Think of them as a natural rain-blocking curtain, stopping water from reaching huge areas and turning them into bone-dry wastelands. If you were a Lystrosaurus or Scutosaurus, you'd glare at those mountains and think, Mother Nature, why you gotta play so dirty if you thought the land couldn't get any worse? Buckle up for the end Permian extinction event, aka the Great Dying, which hit around 252 million years ago. This wasn't your average disaster, it was Earth's apocalypse, like Mother Nature hit the reset button on the whole server. This is the worst extinction event ever, sending both land and sea into a tailspin. The name Great Dying sounds epic, and trust me, it earned that title. The main culprit, the Siberian Traps eruptions, a series of megavolcanoes in what's now Siberia. These weren't your movie-style volcanoes puffing out a bit of smoke. They were destruction machines, spewing lava up to a kilometer thick, blanketing an area as big as Western Europe. Imagine a sea of molten lava larger than France, Italy, and Germany combined. Total nightmare fuel, but lava was just the start. These eruptions also pumped out tons of carbon dioxide and sulfur, heating Earth up like an oven. In some places, the average yearly temperature matched Death Valley, the hottest spot on Earth during its worst month, around 50 degrees or more. Even if you had heat-proof superpowers, you could still choke to death because toxic gases slashed oxygen levels, triggering anoxic events. The land was like an oven with no off switch, and it gets worse. The Siberian Traps eruptions also trashed the ozone layer, Earth's shield against deadly UV rays. Some studies estimate UV radiation spiked by over 5,000% in certain areas. Picture stepping outside without sunscreen and getting charred in 5 minutes flat. That was the Lopingians' vibe. The land wasn't just hot and suffocating, it was like a giant UV tanning bed from hell. If you were a Scutosaurus, you'd be praying for some sunblock fur. How long this disaster dragged on is still debated, but the results are crystal clear. Earth after this event was like a whole new planet. About 57% of all biological families and 83% of species got wiped out. For comparison, the KT extinction that killed the dinosaurs only took out 17% of families. The Great Dying was the final boss of all disasters. The land turned into a post-apocalyptic wasteland where only the toughest survived. Don't think the oceans dodged this drama either. Rising water temperatures and acidification turned the seas into super sour lemonade, hammering marine life. Tons of trilobites, ammonites, and cephalopods got obliterated, making the already empty oceans even more desolate. But here's why you'd still pick the water. At least you wouldn't get fried by UV rays, and while the water was hot, it was still comfier than the land, like soaking in a warm bath instead of roasting in an oven. In short, during the Great Dying, the ocean was the less awful choice. You could swim, chill sort of, and dodge the insane heat on land, even if low oxygen made it a bit tricky. That's the final reason why the water was the safest spot in the Lopingian, though safe here just means slightly less deadly. Thanks for tagging along on this wild, high-stakes adventure through the Lopingian.